Hello again, this is Doug, the 2-Minute Gardener, and we're going to talk about planting a slope and 7 important tips for getting that slope planted. Well, it is November and it's time in Southern California to get out there and plant the slope because this is the time of the year where the soil's cooling off, there's some winter rains, it's just easier to work on the slopes before things get really muddy in January and February. So we're going to look at some wonderful plants. Here's a couple of them, bougainvillea and of course lilac ceanothus, a great California native. And we're going to do a couple of videos later this week that showcase a lot of wonderful plants, both regular plants and succulents that do great on slopes. But first, let's talk about some important tips for planting the slope. And these tips apply to everything from regular plants, succulents, even ground covers are wonderful ways to plant a slope to get it green, reduce the weeds. But the most important thing you have to realize is that tough slope is the toughest part of that is just clearing that slope. You know, you got to dig in and really rip it down to that bare dirt so that you get out those big plants, get out the weeds, scrape it hard. If you have a lot of weeds, you also might want to consider spraying the slope to kill those little seedlings before they start popping up. So number one, you got to clear that slope. 2, adjust the irrigation. Don't just start throwing plants willy-nilly onto that slope. You can irrigate a slope 2 different ways. You can use drip irrigation, depending on if you're just doing a few succulents, or if you're going to do ground covers, then you got to use rotors and kind of spray it. So fix the irrigation before you plant the slope. Next important tip, amend the soil. Don't just stick plants in a slope. Take this opportunity to amend it. You can amend it with the soil building conditioner. You can also use the garden gypsum. I recommend both a garden gypsum and Grow Power if you're doing California natives on a tough slope. Most of our slopes are cut and fill slopes, so they're really barren of nutrients, so they need some help. The Grow Power adds those nutrients back. The gypsum helps break up that hard clay soil so the roots have a better chance of surviving. When you plant it in some grow mulch. That's a great product for actually when it comes time to plant it. So again, plants love amended soil for the most part. You don't have to amend it heavily depending on your slope, but once you get that slope amended, then you got to add the jute netting. This is the most important part when it comes to tips for planting a slope. Jute netting holds the amendments in. It also will hold the mulch on the slope. It also slows down the water. Hey, don't forget to hit that like button if you are enjoying this video and finding it helpful. So definitely, again, jute netting is the most important of the 7 tips when it comes to planting the slope. All right, you've done all that. Now it's time to plant the plants. And again, with jute netting, it's really easy to work with. You just kind of tear open a little hole, stick the plant in the hole. Now, it's very important when you dig out that soil, make sure to make a little berm, a little water well around each one of those plants. That soil is really important for helping those plants hold that water if you make a little berm. All right, next tip is how to slow release fertilizer. It's tough to feed plants once they get up on a steep slope, so you want to put something up there that's going to feed them for 6 months. I love Best Packs. It's a really nice slow release fertilizer, but there's lots of different ones on the market. Make sure to get a slow release fertilizer in each one of those planting holes. Next tip is put some shredded mulch on that slope. Not bark nugget mulch, that will just roll down the slope in a big rainstorm. Use that shredded mulch, which kind of is fibrous and locks up on itself, so it's really good for covering a slope, helping reduce the weeds that can pop up, but also when things get hot next spring, it keeps the soil nice and cool. All right, next tip, because a lot of slopes get overrun with weeds in the spring, is you want to put down a pre-emergent herbicide on the slope in the winter time, November, December, January. This stops weeds from germinating. 90% of all weeds we see on our slopes are just weed seeds that have blown in from other landscapes. So this product will help stop those weeds from germinating. If you have dogs, don't use this. If you have small children, don't use it. It is an herbicide. Also, I wouldn't recommend using it if it might roll down into a fruit orchard or a vegetable garden. But if it's just an ornamental plant slope, this is a product I really do recommend. Finally, you've planted all the plants, you've done the mulching, you think you're done? Not really. You need to kind of just fine-tune that irrigation. So once you get all the plants in the ground, make sure you take a look at where your emitters are, where your irrigation heads are if you're using that kind of irrigation method, and just double check everything. And finally, make sure to wash it all down. You've been throwing mulch and preen and all this dirt around. Just wash those plants off one more time, either by hand or turn on the overhead irrigation, and get it nice and clean, and the plants will really reward it. And you may not see a lot of growth for the first few months because those roots are kind of setting up shop under the soil, but things will really come together nicely 6 months later down the road. All right, don't forget to tune in later this week. We're going to look at top 10 plants for slopes and top 10 favorite succulents for slopes. But that's all the time we have for right now. This is Doug, the 2-Minute Gardener, saying, again, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to get more of my garden videos. Until next time, this is Doug, the 2-Minute Gardener, saying thanks for watching.